All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the afternoon session here at the Pharma Insight Briefings. Day 3, CPhI, Thursday afternoon. You're almost home. A couple more hours before it closes, so congratulations. So we're going to talk a little about, the current trends and perspectives, from a contract development and manufacturing organizations' perspectives, and how we see, how the supply chain is evolving, and what the current demands are. My name is Marc Sauer. I'm the Vice President of R&D at BioVector. I have been with the company for 11 years, have been in pharma for 20 years, had various roles in R&D and in quality, but have been part of the executive management at BioVector for 4 years now. I have been told that I'm best tolerated in measured doses, so we decided to split the talk into 2 portions, and my colleague Matt will talk over as soon as he thinks I'm done. So we've split the talk up into 3 different sections. I will talk a little about the global pharmaceutical market, some data, people always like data, and then see how that translates into the, more specifically in the contract manufacturing and contract developing market. And then Matt will step in and kind of give you an idea what our strategy and our ideas are to play an important role and a sustainable role in today's supply chain. But before we get started, maybe just to provide some grounding, what we are about and where we are from. Because if I'm doing a poll here, who has heard of BioVector before? Anybody in this room? Very good. So yeah, very good. She organized the talk, so it would be shameful if not. But this is we're a mid-sized contract development manufacturing organization that is catering to the bio and pharma technology industry that is operating globally. So we're not necessarily focused on our home market, which is Atlantic Canada. This pointer's not working on the TV, so if you see me trying something here that's not working, it's habit. So we are located in the Atlantic Canadian region. We have 3 facilities on Prince Edward Island, which is our headquarter province, and we have 1 in the neighboring province in Nova Scotia. Our 4 GMP facilities combine to about 110,000 square feet of manufacturing space, with 50,000 liter of reactor and 70,000 liter of fermentation capacity. These 4 facilities are home to our 300 employees. The brunt of our employees is in manufacturing, but we have 60 in quality, 35 in R&D, and almost 20 in business development. We were founded in the early 70s, so we have been around for a while. We have been doing contract manufacturing for several decades now, and that is reflected in the types of filing that we have done over the years, ANDAs, DMFs, BMFs, and CMC sections. We are regularly inspected by Health Canada because that is our main regulatory body, but we also see the FDA and the Japanese PMDA on a regular basis. And Matt will talk a little bit more about what we do, but just to give you an idea where we're coming from, and what our main focus is, it basically is 3 different units that we see our growth going forward, and that is in complex chemistry, microbial fermentation, and in formulation development. So we are a true contract manufacturing, but also a contract development organization that is providing services, at all phases of the product life cycle, going from preclinical all the way to commercial. So if you take a look at the global pharmaceutical market at the moment, and I've tried to collect some data from various reputable sources. The global drug market is anticipated to grow at a rate of about 6% between now and 2022. It's a healthy growth rate. It's kind of like in tune with what we've seen in previous years, and similarly to that, the US is still dominating that market. So almost 60% of the growth that's being seen there in terms of sales will be coming from the US market. There are other areas that are growing volume-wise, but if it comes to sales, the US will still play the most dominant role in the next years. If you look at the type of molecules that are being sold, we've seen that as of 2016, there's an even split between traditional small molecules and biologics, and it's almost on par to be 50-50. But if you look at the top 10 in terms of revenue, you have seen, I think, for the first time, a shift towards biologics, and them being 6 out of 10 in the most successful products. One area that is important to look at, if you look at the revenue that's being generated and the growth, you can't turn your back on margins. And one thing that has been seen in 2016 is that the overall margin have decreased. We do see like growth in the revenue category, but if you look at margins, there has been a sharp decline of almost 4% in 2016. And it is important because custom manufacturing is estimated to be roughly 1/3 of the global cost of goods sold when it comes to drug product manufacturing. In terms of therapeutic areas, the next 5 years we'll see a focus on these 5 areas here in oncology, diabetes, autoimmune, anticoagulants, and HIV, and they're projected to make up roughly 60% of the growth in the next 5 years. It's not equally distributed among those 5. Oncology is being high teens, while HIV is maybe at the high single digit, and that will obviously drive different areas of growth in the custom manufacturing. When you look at the pipeline, in the clinical pipeline, we're seeing roughly 2,000 biologic molecules and about 3,000 small molecules. If you expand that out into development, you're probably seeing like twice as many, and probably a little bit more biologics and small molecules in this area. So looking at this, there's good projected growth areas for the global pharmaceutical market, very healthy pipeline. So the question is, how does it translate into this contract manufacturing, contract development market? If you're familiar with the space, one thing that still, is somewhat amazing is that, if you look at the top 5, companies in this space, they attribute to about 25% of the total revenue that is generated in the contract manufacturing. And then you have 250 companies that start at about 10 million in revenue that then make up for the remaining 75%. So it's a very highly polarized and very fragmented market. Also giving you an indication that there's a lot of specialized technology out there. The demand for outsourced products has a similar growth projection as the overall global pharmaceutical market, about 6%. It might be a little bit higher. Still a very healthy market, and it's believed that it will eclipse around 85 million in 2021. The one striking, or one of the most recent discussion points in contract manufacturing and development is that the future is biologics. But if you look at it today, and if you look at 2016, you will find that only 10% of the revenue that was generated by contract manufacturing and development organization was actually coming from biologics. And the main reason for that is that, in particular, Big Pharma does not believe that capacity and capability is available in contract manufacturing or across the contract manufacturing space to do this. So a lot of investment have been made in the space by Big Pharma, and most of that development and manufacturing is kept in-house. If you look at small molecules, it's a very mature market. Nobody has concern that it can be executed by contract manufacturing. A lot of that is being outsourced. If you look at the growth areas, so however, biologics are estimated to outpace small molecules in the next 5 years. So although it might not be the dominating market right now, it's definitely something worth considering in the future. So when we take another look at what is being outsourced, we talked about small molecules and we talked about biologics, analytical services, clinical service has seen a nice growth rate over the last years. But most of the products that are being outsourced to contract manufacturers are tech transfers, so that is already registered commercial products. That's roughly making up 2/3 of the overall volume. And then you have 1/3 of new molecular entities, which would then result in a NDA filing or something like that. In terms of small molecules, we talked about revenue, so 90-10 split. In terms of volume being outsourced, it's more on the 65% of all small molecules are being manufactured and developed by contract manufacturers, and roughly 1/4 of the biologics molecule. I added a note here, like indicating what I just talked about Big Pharma. So the large molecules coming out of Big Pharma are at about 13-14% right now. So there's still a lot of market to be had, and that's something that will have to be seen in the near future if that really, is being outsourced more. In terms of general, outsourcing, the smaller the company is, the more likely it is that they outsource. So 80% of the revenue generated by CDMOs are coming from small and mid-sized companies. So it's definitely something, worth considering when you're working in that space. Like who are my clients? Who is really like my target audience? And in terms of like geographic region, there's really no preference. It's where the business is. If the business is in North America, you see it happening there. But US, the EU and India, they combine to roughly 50% of the total. So and the rest is spread out throughout the rest of the world. All right, so there's a lot of data that you can find in the public domain, and if you read through the market research data that are available. But one thing we also want to talk about is like, okay, so we are like an Atlantic Canadian CDMO, have been around for 45 years. What do we see right now? What are current trends? What is brought back to us from our clients? And one thing that we have seen in particular over the last 5 years is that each project is becoming, and each product is becoming more and more unique. So we often, or more often, seeked out for specialized technology we have. If you work in high potence, or you have a specific drying technology, a formulation, something that adds value to the product, that's one of the main reasons why people are trying to outsource their material at this point. Yeah, very, very important that you're able to customize so, because like I said, each product is unique in its offering, and you have to be able to account for that. So there's not one boilerplate, template that can be used to develop all projects across the board. Pricing is still important. Everybody looks at price, and we talked at margins. The margins are declining, so there's an emphasis still on cost. It's not the main driver, but it's still important. And everybody looks at simplified supply chains. And one of the other topics that's heavily discussed now in CDMO is the one-stop shop. I want to have a CDMO or a CMO that can do everything: development, clinical, commercial, discovery, put it in the fill finish, label it, ship it, all of that. And that's only true for a handful of CDMOs, because in order to be really good at everything, like in development and manufacturing of APIs and drug product development and all of that, you need a lot of infrastructure and a lot of capacity, and only very few of them have that. When we look at it, what people really look for more is the end-to-end service. Can you do development services that will take me all the way to commercial? I don't want to switch halfway through my development in phase 2A or B and try to find somebody else because you don't have the scale. So it's really more important to think about, can I provide end-to-end service rather than to try to fit everything in one box and then maybe not being really good at that. And proximity, and this is geographic proximity, but also proximity to the relationship, becoming more and more important. If you are a smaller company, do you really want to have a supply chain that is on 5 different continents, or do you want to have it close to the area where you do your work? Development time, that's another aspect that is changing somewhat, because the traditional concept of, okay, we do phase 1, we see how it goes, we do phase 2, then phase 3 we start validating something. That's not the case anymore. It's more and more often that clients come to us and say, okay, I want everything validated in phase 1, because I might go for a fast track or a breakthrough destination, and we may not have time. We need to lock in early. So there's more and more emphasis to do really good development early on. As early as tox studies, preclinical, but definitely phase 1. So that's definitely a shift that we have seen. And with that, it's more and more important that you have good customer service. And what we mean by this is that, most of our clients really appreciate having access to our subject matter experts, having access to our project management, and through that also having access to our quality system. It's not the times of people coming, make this product for me, give me a CFA, and that's all I want. That's long gone. It's more about like, okay, so how do you write your BPRs? Can we incorporate them into our system, into our CMC filing? So there's more and more input and a lot more closer relationship between different aspects of companies outsourcing and companies providing manufacturing services. I lost my clicker. So it's really a much closer relationship now than it maybe have been like 5 or 10 years ago. And it's more about being a partner and really caring about your client's success and being part of that. And it can go as far as doing some risk sharing, combined investment into facilities or equipment. So this is something that is half our own research and is also based on a survey that was done by by That's Nice, where they interviewed earlier in this year, people who are outsourcing manufacturing services, and this is a ranking of what are the current most seeked after like client requirements. Is it cost? No, cost is important, but it's not the main driver anymore. So based on the service that was done by them, one of the main drivers is access to specialized technologies, and we talked about that. If you're doing high potence, if you have a special formulation, a special way of how you can dry materials, looking after morphology, that's becoming more and more important because that also improves the quality and the value of your product. But in order to do so, you also have the expertise. And this is not about like, we have the equipment. It's really, do you have the right people? Have you done this before? It gives our clients a lot of comfort if we can tell them, yes, that's something we have. We have done multiple filings, many commercial products. We have the expertise. Because if you're a smaller company, a mid-sized company, it's most of the time a very big investment. You want to make sure that it's being looked after right. And that goes hand in hand into the customer service. And like I say, if you can also reduce cost, even better, but it's not the main driver at this point. So looking at all of that, so what does it mean for a CDMO? If I look at the current market, it appears that based on the market data, the revenue that's being generated is still predominantly in small molecules, proven technologies, being a service provider. But then if you look at the opportunities that are out there, a lot of things are pointing towards large molecules because there will be more and more outsourced. There's more and more biologics in the pipeline, and there's more value being generated with these types of molecules. So one area to look at there is to develop adjacent capabilities where you can say, hey, maybe I'm able to take on both. Maybe I'm able to combine offerings to cater to both markets a little bit, and then also to fully embrace a partnership model, going away from the service provider, okay, I want your PO, I give you your CMA, to becoming really part of the journey, with your client through all phases of the product lifecycle. I just got the sign from my colleagues, so I've said enough. So there will be a chance to ask questions later on. He will answer all of them. But yeah, good luck, man.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thanks for joining us again. And I'll build off of Marc's overview of the industry to dig a little bit more into the specific areas of expertise that BioVector offers and how we work with our clients in multiple ways across the supply chain. So just to review, all right. Just to review, there's three main areas that BioVector provides services to our clients. It's in synthetic chemistry, microbial fermentation, and then formulation development as well. So within these three groups, there's several areas of specialization. And I think we'll run through those, but it's important to point out on one of the last trends that Marc had mentioned on these fast track designations and even just the biotech model of moving quickly as possible. And that even relates back to the financing efforts within the industry. So within BioVector, we have, as I mentioned, we have expertise in synthetic chemistry, fermentation of small molecules, but also fermentation of large molecules. Within the synthesis group, we have specialized chemistry in high potency, as well as MPEG reagents. And then we also do, we manufacture some fine chemical bioreagents that can work in tandem with some of the large molecule fermentation that our clients may use. And lastly, for formulation development. So there's a number of different expertise within the company that have evolved over the years, and we'll walk through some of those next. Before we do that, I'll just run through a few of the capabilities within the company. We've got a well-equipped R&D group. Marc had mentioned we're about 300 people, but 2/3 of the company is dedicated towards manufacturing. We have a strong R&D group and then a separate QC/QA group that supports the manufacturing. So within Synthesis Group, we have equipment from glassware up to 50 liters, all the supporting analytical on site. We have the fermentation technology for development, scale up, and moving those processes into manufacturing into a larger scale equipment. And as I mentioned, we have potent handling and well-equipped analytical labs. For scale-up, we have ranges up to 4,000 liter vessels. For synthetic chemistry, we have 6 GMP suites and have a variety or a wide range of capabilities into the chemistry that you can see there. And we have additional capacity in our facility for non-GMP scale-up. On the small molecule fermentation, we have pilot suites all the way through 15,000 liter commercial suites and the supporting chromatography that is required to generate those materials in high quality for the intended application, whether or not that's at an early tox batch through clinical trials and commercialization. And then for large molecules, we have additional capacity that starts at the 200 liter scale or before that at lab scales, and then through to large scale commercial manufacturing as well, and the associated purifications. Likewise, in our formulation development group, we have a variety of capabilities. These are more focused on complex formulations, for example, nanoparticles and liposomal formulations. And within the synthesis group, this just builds on what I mentioned earlier about working on specialized MPEG reagents. And these are also materials that are very key to the supply chain and require high purities and key specifications for moving through the commercial manufacturing. So that's just a bit of a background on our capabilities, equipment, different groups. So now we'll walk through how these are somewhat related and how we work with our clients in multiple areas. So for example, we can perform natural product synthesis. We've done this with many clients, and in one particular case, we were manufacturing the API. They had an issue with the raw material that they were providing to us, and we worked closely with the clients. Marc mentioned this earlier, of developing strategic relationships, developing partnerships. So we built in additional capacity for them for the specific project. We were able to continue their supply chain and continue on with the chemical synthesis. So it really demonstrates those two areas of expertise, but also again builds off of that client relationship and working closely with them along the different pathways from clinical and through market launch. So on the fermentation of large molecules, you can start to see how clients may wish for us to also work in different areas with them where they need MPEG reagents as well to go along with these projects. So there we work with them on the fermentation side of it, but our synthetic group is also working to develop the MPEG reagents. I'd say a trend there on, if I can speak to the MPEG reagents in particular, in the last number of years we've seen a lot of requests come in from clients that would buy the MPEGs off the shelf for early clinical trials, but as they were proceeding towards commercial launch, they really needed to develop their own GMP source, and that's all related to the CMC data and their filing in order to have a successful filing. So the materials that they used very early on in the clinical trials weren't applicable for them to proceed and move on to commercialization. So we worked with them. They're very complicated projects because specifications need to be matched to the earlier materials they were using. And so again, it just demonstrates that strategic relationship of working closely, testing the comparability of the material that they used previously, and ensuring that that would be appropriate to coverage from their clinical trials moving forward. So this example here just ties in our chemical synthesis and formulation development efforts. There again, a good example would be our high potency capabilities, working with clients in that area, but also helping them with different formulation formulation development of the final product in tandem. This is actually a really interesting dynamic in the last even year. We've had a lot of requests in this area as well. So we have a number of examples where we're working with clients and we can produce an enzyme, and then that enzyme is used within a chemical synthesis route to perform or to make the actual final product. So we have ongoing projects at the moment, and we've done that in the past as well. So that gives you a quick overview of the company, gives you an idea of how we've evolved these different areas of expertise over the years, and it was always working with our clients on multiple areas of the program. Long term, that has benefits into their supply chain, as well as just this strategic relationship or working relationship, and there's efficiencies in that manner as well. So just to kind of summarize, we have a number of these specialized areas and perform high quality work and like to do that closely with our clients. So that brings it to the end of my presentation. So I'd just like to thank you again for joining us. And if you do have any questions, we are available.